Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Motivational speaker, the comeback coach, and goal crusher Joe Rivera brings you inspiring leaders, incredible stories, and valuable lessons on how you can change, grow, and reforge your life. Now, here's your host, Joe Rivera.
What's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Reforge Your Life Show. I'm your host, Joe Rivera, and here at the Reforge Your Life Show, we like to show you that the comeback is more than possible. And today, I'm super excited about the guest that I'm bringing onto the show. She's a certified high performance executive coach, Michelle Hammonds. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe. It's such a privilege to be here. I'm excited about our session today.
Yeah, I'm excited about it also. I'm grateful for you to come on the platform and for us to be able to create impact together. And man, I've heard your story, but I can't tell it anywhere as close to as good as you can. I don't think anybody else can either. I know nobody else can. So please, I'd love for you to share your story with the audience and let them know a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you. I know, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. It's in my DNA. And through my life and career, I've spent time in corporate as well as entrepreneurship. And so one of the things that life calls us to sometimes is those moments where we have to pivot. We have to make decisions and take bold moves. And so back in 2017, I left my corporate role to pursue coaching full time. There was a couple of reasons that was important. One is I had a beautiful 95-year-old grandmother who needed my support. And I knew there would come a day that I needed more flexibility, more laptop lifestyle, because she lived in a very remote place here where I live. And so making that leap enabled not only for me to take care of a family member, but it also just let me play out and play with my entrepreneurial roots, which I've had on and off throughout my career and life.
Yeah, man, that transition from corporate, from another job out there, it to entrepreneurship is definitely challenging in itself. And man, grandma being 95 years old, man, what a blessing. My grandmother's 89, just turned 89. And I mean, it's such a blessing to have them in our lives.
Yes.
So what challenges came with that transition though? Because that's a big jump. There's a lot, to unpack there.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of us that are in the place where we've had some entrepreneur business mindset or even been in an entrepreneur role, you realize that you have a lot of different hats you wear in an entrepreneur life. And for those of my corporate people out there listening, when you're in corporate, you're really doing, a consolidated role for the organization. So the hats you wear are much more minimal than when you step into entrepreneurship and start to decide you want to own your own business. And a lot of people, this is the number one thing searched every Monday morning is what kind of business can I open, right? Because people want freedom, they want flexibility, they want all these options. And so I think what was maybe in the moment, because I've done this a couple of times in my career, like the cycles that I've gone through, but in this particular cycle, it was really easy for me because earlier in my career, I had done a similar leap when my mom became a cancer patient and I had to take care of her when I was 28 and start to really look at life and work. It was going to look different for a bit. And I wasn't sure what that looked like. And so at that point, I would say your question takes me back to an earlier decision where that was a lot scarier the first time because I knew I was the sole breadwinner. I had to take care of myself, but I also needed to step in and take care of my mom at that time. So when it came up to do round 2 with my grandmother years later in 2017, one, I just knew the trade-off was super worth it, right? Like we'll figure it out. High performers, we figure these things out. There's always another job. There's always another option. And for your listeners, I would say you're not stuck. Like you can create so many great things in your life just by making one decision. And so I think it was really hard the first time because it was a lot scarier. But the second time I was like, I know that when I get to the end of my life and look back, I will want to have said to myself, I've taken care of my family when they needed it. I've done pivots when I needed to make those pivots, and you go create what you want. Right. And so I think I'm just looking back at that. It's just knowing that this was going to be a different journey to take, but it was one that was going to be super worth it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's important for the audience to know um, how vital it is to understand the power of decision making. And when you make a decision, to not get caught up on the how, because we end up figuring it out. Right. And I think every single successful entrepreneur that I've come across, you don't worry about the how, because the how, what that could create is procrastination, self-doubt, worry. And when you remove that how and you go forward to what's moving the needle in your life, man, it ends up getting figured out. And you're like, man, thank God I didn't worry about the how. Thank God I didn't procrastinate. So what was some of the other challenges that you were faced with going into this entrepreneurship the second time around? Because it sounds like you learned a lot from the first time you did that transition, but now you had to go into that second round, and it might have been easier, but what were those other challenges that you were faced with?
Yeah. So the first time it was about creating something out of nothing, right? Like it was a high necessity for me to make a change. So living through that whole experience round one, I knew all those lessons, right? I knew where the pivot points were, where it got harder, the duration of time that could be, that this could go on for. And so I think in the second cycle of stepping out into entrepreneurship, it was really more the unknown of the industry, because I was changing industries to an industry. I was not familiar with coaching. I mean, I had coaches growing up, but this industry, as you know, is emerging, and more demand is coming forward for it. And so I think it was just not knowing the industry. A lot of times, I had been in travel and transportation, I had been in oil and gas, and these have long-standing histories. But when we look at like creative works, like being a photographer, because that's one of the roles I stepped into the first round, is I knew I trusted my creative instincts. And so when I translated that into coaching, I was like, well, I know the emotional work is there, like when you create images for people, but I just didn't have the same knowns. There were more unknowns, I think, about what the demand was, what the industry was. And as I got to know more and more coaches in my network, there's so many coaches, as you know, that do so many different kinds of things. So I was like, okay, part of it was just maybe deciding the thing that you were going to go and do, right? Getting clear and specific on which modality of coaching was going to be the one that you pick. Because as you know, you can hire a coach for almost anything that you want to learn and grow in. And there's different specialties and subject matter experts across many, many, many topics of consideration. So it was kind of like going from this big, massive amount of options to narrowing it down. I think that was probably one of the most challenging when I was really making that transition. And I was trying to learn and talk to people and get all that intel. But I think that was probably the thing that was a little bit uncertain or felt the most challenging, is like, how do you narrow it down and explain what you do?
Yeah, getting that clarity on what the niche is definitely is something that can be challenging in the industry that we're in. And when it comes to, like the fears that you had to overcome through this journey, what would you say some of those biggest fears were that you overcame?
So I think it's just the fear of learning what might come next. So I'm a faith-based person. So I have a strong belief that God's guiding me and helping me every step of the way. That may not be true for everyone listening. So I kind of always lean in heavily on faith. So fear is not a big obstacle, but I would say where it slows me down is just some of the unknowns, right? Like, when you get into a new industry of any kind, a lot of times you get overwhelmed with all kinds of different strategies and philosophies. And so in this space, there's like all the online versions, there's the offline versions, there's, hey, do the social media version, do the old school networking version. So I think there was just like all these options that the fear of picking the wrong option might have been one of the things that probably took some time to figure out. And again, you have to work in your style, your authentic style, for anything to work out. So I think the fear of the unknown was just, what do you need? What don't you need? And it's a simple business model. So you don't need a lot, but you do need some things depending on what strategies you're going to deploy. So I think the fear of not knowing the right strategy maybe was something that in the beginning, because it was a new industry and new options of how, like the how could play out. It's like, okay, how do I know which one is going to be the best one? Or how do I align myself to know this is a good solid path to take, not just try to make it up and make it stick as you go. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do when they start a business. They have a dream, they have a vision, they have no plan, and they have no actionable strategies to get started. So I think that was probably because this was a new industry, some of it, but you still can pull those old skills from other learnings through that help guide you. But I think I wouldn't say it was big, scary fear for me because I'd done it before. It just felt like maybe believing in yourself and recognizing you have to keep sounding it out and talking to people about it and seeing the benefit to them. Anytime we hire a coach, they're going to help us unpack another level. That's what coaching is. So we have to apply those principles to ourselves too.
Yeah, man, there's a couple of things there that you said to unpack, but something I want to really have the audience pick up on. First off, I want all the viewers and listeners out there, man, for the people on YouTube, drop in the comments, what's a fear that you're looking to overcome that's been crippling you or stopping you from moving forward? And when it comes to that fear, and you mentioned how you have faith in God and helping you overcome challenges that come in your life, I think it's important for the audience to understand that, it does, whether it's God, look, I believe in the higher source that I call God. And I believe that that's what helps me unlock my fullest potential. And you don't have to call it God. You could call it the universe, the infinite intelligence, whatever you believe, but understanding that higher source is going to, help you get through those difficult times of fear, doubt, worry is vital for success. And understanding that fear and faith, it's the same thing. Right? It's believing something that's there. You can't touch it. You can't feel it, but you know it exists. Lean into that faith to help you overcome that fear. Because that's exactly what Michelle's talking about there, of why fear isn't this big, scary thing, because these are obstacles that she knows she could overcome because of the fact that there's faith there. And that's important. Thanks for sharing that, Michelle, because I think that's vital.
Yeah. And some of the sideline commentary that comes when you make a big decision. So, just again, for the listeners out there, I've made those leaps where people said, oh, but you're leaving a best employer. Oh, you're leaving a best level of income. Oh, you're leaving the best benefits. These are common things that well-intended people around you will say to you. And I always advocate for having a good transition plan. Like, you can burn the ship and that works for some people. I do not advocate that for everyone, but some personalities and styles, they can really rise to the occasion and do well with that philosophy. Most of us, though, want a little bit more security and balance in transitions that we might make. And so you have to remember that part of the passion that comes from you is the driver that's going to help you figure out the how that you can't see. And I've coached enough in humans at this point that, especially with that faith lens, you couldn't orchestrate the how if you tried, the way it sometimes unfolds. And sometimes it unfolds so much more bigger and beautiful than you could ever have in your own mind calculated it, right? Or thought about it. So sometimes we have to let go and trust the process that we are working with a higher guidance and power to fulfill those dreams or vision on the inside.
Man, yeah, and you said let go and trust the process. something happens when you let go and let God, let that source, let the universe, whatever it is you believe, again, be in control of the process and trust the process and say, you know what? I'm in good hands. I'm going to be okay. And something you mentioned that's really important is, there's going to be naysayers out there. There's going to be people to tell you that you're crazy for doing what you're doing. You're crazy for leaving a 9 to 5. You're crazy for leaving a salary. You're crazy for going after your dreams. And you know what? Let them say that. You know what? They're crazy for not going after their dreams. So those dream stompers, let them fuel your success rather than hold you back and drain your energy from moving forward. Michelle, I'm curious, what was some of the beliefs that you had to let go, and those limited beliefs you had to overcome? Because I believe that there's a belief system that's cracked through in order to move that needle in our life, to move forward into our purpose, into what's driving us. So what were some of those old beliefs that you had to overcome?
Well, I think one that comes to mind is I really do believe if someone else in the universe out of our 8 billion fellow mankind that we live with on this planet has figured it out, I can figure it out too. So just having that belief in yourself instead of self-doubt, choosing self-belief versus choosing self-doubt doesn't mean that we're going to do it perfectly on the first time. It doesn't mean we're not going to fumble or stumble or it's going to be a hot mess, but just to fundamentally believe this is my dream. I believe that I can create outcomes by going for it more than the fear of not doing anything, right? Or the what ifs. What if you lose your job? What if the salary that you were used to and you don't replace your salary? These what if scenarios, I think, are something you really have to battle. And by the way, when you mentioned naysayers, sometimes those look like our beautiful friends and family that surround us, because you have to remember the way we ask ourselves permission to get comfortable with something when we're uncomfortable. It's just our brain we're not calculating, hey, why am I not comfortable with this, right? What's creating the discomfort? And so we have to just really, it's a mindset piece that you have to really work on, especially in entrepreneurship, because it's a roller coaster, right? Very few entrepreneur or self-employed business owners that created their own companies will tell you it's a straight and narrow line and there's just all this rhythm to it. It is up and down. It's around the bends. It's the unexpected, but that's part of the excitement and energy and passion too. So I think it's really being able to look at the things, because that doesn't mean like there's not something in the background going, well, but I know you believe this, but what if this happens, right? Or like there's this inner battle going on between what if it's possible or what if it's not possible, right? Or what if you succeed versus what if you fail? And it's not that black and white. Most of the time we're going to learn in the journey where we're going to make progress if we just keep applying consistent effort and have some sensibility about what we're doing and where we're going. Even if it's something brand new, there's so much information today at our fingertips that we can access and get support through things like AI or other sources, right? Experts that you might know or hire to help you. So I think it really is, you've got to mind your thinking. And every human that I've ever encountered, we are wired for the disposition of thinking about disempowering and negative thoughts. And so you have to fortify and have a plan for how you're going to overcome those when they show up. And so for me, like I think of it mentally, I'm like, punt, let's get this thought out of here. This thought's not serving me. This thought's not even true or real. And as you said, faith or fear, they both require you believe in something you can't see. They are the same thing. It's just which which perspective you want to bring to it. So I think that's some of the ways. It's just that what are those habits or routines that are going to help fortify your thinking when the doubt creeps in? Because it's going to show up and knock on your door, and it's probably going to come and be a visitor on your couch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to think about like how are you going to combat that? Because you should expect it, for one. If you're not having a little bit of it, then you're not moving outside the comfort zone. So if you're not having any doubts or fears at all, then it says you're really comfortable or stuck, or you might even be stuck in a rhythm that's not pushing you to your highest potential. So I think those are some of the reflections I would share.
Yeah, no, that's so important. because those what ifs, those doubts, they are going to creep up. And if you allow them to control and shape your future, they will. But you have to remember, they're not in the driver's seat. You are. You're controlling where your life is going to go. So, being able to reframe the story that you're telling yourself is so important, because that story will shape your destiny. The story that you tell yourself. So, and guess who's the narrator of that story? You are. So you control which way it's going to go. And I think that, these limited beliefs are also there to be able to help us grow. And when we reshape our thinking, it helps us for the next time another limited belief gets created, and you have to reframe that one, and you have to overcome that inner critic that's inside telling you that you're not good enough, that you can't do something. And man, the power of our words and story we tell ourselves is so important. And just, removing little things like can't to can, and removing the shoulds from your life is so important for people to realize. Michelle, I'm also curious about the fact that when we crack through a limited belief system, and an old belief system, I should say, and we create a new belief system, we uncover these things called core values. And those core values are aligned with who we are, and the new identity that we built in ourselves, and that new frame of mind, that new way of thinking. And we utilize those core values to overcome challenges when they come up again in life. Because guess what, everybody? Just because you reforge your life doesn't mean that everything's great and there's no more challenges. Challenges are still going to come up. So what are some of those core values that you uncovered that you lean into now when challenges do arise in your life?
Yeah, this is such a deep question, and a really profound one for those of you listening, because you have to know where your values stand. And even throughout our lives, as we may evolve and actualize into a better person or a worse person than where we started in our journey, your values aren't going to change all that much. You may adopt new values in the process, but fundamentally they don't change a lot. So I really like looking at values when I'm working with people, because so one of my values that's always been since I was a really young kid, as early as I can remember, 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe, freedom, the ability to be free, the ability to, and freedom in the sense of a kid's like exploration, like we'd go out adventuring. We were able to do things, right, in different seasons. So I think you have to look to some of your defining moments to really, and most people never do this exercise, but to sit with those defining moments where are those markers in your life up to this point where you took a stand, you made a big decision, you pivoted, you took a risk. Wherever you find those moments for you, and only you can define what those are, you probably have had 6 or 8 or maybe more if you've been super adventurous, where you can go back and go, here's what was at play in that scenario. So for me, freedom is one of my fundamental values, because I've always been willing to move, either geographically, out of a job, move into a different situation, move into a different business. So that's a very significant word for me. The others that go with it are enthusiasm and creativity. So I've always been like a huge Walt Disney study, like just of all his, like, I love looking at old pictures where he's drawn out and sketched his characters, right? Because he would literally draw out of his imagination. So I've always had kind of an internal mantra. This might be the first time I've ever said this out loud, that like, if you have a problem, like thinking in those terms of like someone like Walt Disney, where he's drawing things, you could draw your way out of it. You can create your way out of it. And I think creativity is so powerful, because sometimes when we get stuck or stifled in our thinking, or we get backed into a corner or feel up against some high pressure or a wall, it's like, I always think about, okay, how do I draw my way out of this? Where do I find the wiggle room? And so I think creativities and freedom both allow you to have a lot of flexibility and fluidity in the process. And then the last one is enthusiasm. It's like, if I'm going to decide to do something, I'm going to do it with all the enthusiasm I have. Because if you're giving less than that, you're going to get less than on your results. And so I think those are three, and those are three of my very core values. The other one I would throw in there is I've just always operated with an idea that if I'm going to attempt something, I'm going to do it with excellence. I'm going to do it at my very best. Yeah. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it perfectly. There's a very big difference between perfection and excellence, but I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it all of my enthusiasm. I'm going to allow the creativity to flow. I'm going to bring the freedom of process, the freedom of thought, so that I can get the best outcomes. I think all of those kind of inner work in my world when I think about the journey I've taken. And those have been super clear for me for a really long time.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. And freedom is so important in so many different avenues of life. And creativity also, right? You want to be creative in what you're doing in your life. And it using that imagination is so important. There's so many, for some reason, as people grow older from childhood, they stop using their imagination. And your imagination is what helps you create your vision. Without having, that vision in life, you won't be able to go walk and live in your purpose, because you won't be able to be aligned with it, because you can't see it. You won't be able to believe it, which is something Michelle mentioned earlier. That's very important, is believing in yourself. And you speak about Walt Disney, man, and he had that creativity, and he also had something else that's important for entrepreneurs to understand. Is that resilience and perseverance. I mean, the guy got turned down at how many banks for Walt Disney before he actually, they told him yes. I mean, for years I think he was older than 50 when he finally got approved for Walt Disney and started Disney World, which is incredible. How important has resilience been in your life? Building that perseverance muscle.
Oh, I think resilience is one of those things you have to, again, be putting yourself in situations where you build resilience. If there's no resistance, you're not going to build resilience. If everything is kind of hunky dory, you're kind of, smooth, right? If you don't have that, then it's going to be something that you have to put yourself in situations to build resistance. It doesn't build on its own. It's like if you go to the gym, right, for example, and you don't pick up the weights. What builds your muscle is the resistance of the weight that you're putting on yourself. So if we think about that metaphorically in our mind, like you've got to be putting yourself in situations where growth can happen or change can happen. Yes. So I think that's how we build resilience. And some of us just get comfortable, right? Like there's a default that maybe there's probably someone listening right now that is thinking, how did I get to my career where I'm at? Well, I kind of defaulted into it. Somebody said, hey, you should do this. Or maybe it wasn't even their idea or thought that you would, they didn't intentionally pick it, right? So resilience gets formed and built through doing uncomfortable things. Just like that's why it's so hard for most people to practice a gym routine, because until you get to the results you want, it's hard to get the mindset going and to show up there every day to do it, right? It's easy to let that one go. That's just an example. So I think it's stretching yourself and thinking like I think I've always had an adopted mindset where it's like, what challenge am I throwing down to myself right now? What's my next thing that I'm going to challenge myself to do or to think about? It might be learning. It might be volunteering. It could be anything, right? How to cook a new recipe or whatever it might be. But like, how are you actualizing and growing and building the resilience? Because it gets built over doing the reps and having both successes and failures.
Absolutely. Repetition is the mother of skill. And going out of that comfort zone, staying in that comfort zone, you're stunting your growth. When you go out of that comfort zone and you start growing, that's where the magic occurs, man. That's where, you start really living and experiencing life is out of that comfort zone. Michelle, I'd love for you to tell the audience, what it is you're doing now and where they could find you.
Sure. So I today work with leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyday people who are just wanting to level up their life and their business. A lot of times it's looked at as I have this goal and I'm going to grow my business. But you have to grow yourself to grow your business. And so we look at that from a holistic perspective through the work I do in high performance coaching. And it really does help you not only master your internal world better, but also get the clarity and get really specific on what's important. And really through the process of taking the journey, you let go of things that are robbing you of important time or resources or energy that's taking your focus away. So a lot of times it's really getting more finite and clarity and specificity is what I like to say, because a lot of us are trying to do a lot of different things, and that also dilutes our results, and we don't see that. So that's how I work today. And you can get a hold of me through LinkedIn, or you can get a hold of me through my website, which is creativityplaybook.com, because each of us have a custom playbook that we're working from. We are not created equal. We are not the same. We have a lot of similarities, but you have your vision, your journey, your goals, your dreams, that passion, those values that you talked about. And so all of that comes together holistically.
Man, awesome. And all that's going to be in the show notes for all the listeners and viewers. If you haven't checked in with Michelle, check it out, man. She's a game changer in what she's doing out there. Couple of things that I ask all my audience. All my guests, I'm sorry. What happened? Hold on, Michelle. So which part? Okay, so go back. So okay. All right. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michelle. And for all of y'all who have not checked Michelle out, check her out. She's awesome. She's a game changer in what she does, and I highly suggest that. Michelle, one thing that I ask all my guests that come on is, what does the word purpose mean to you?
For me, purpose is very powerful. I believe, again, that we're here for a very divine purpose, that we were created by God, and that we will leave this world executing, hopefully, on our purpose that we were put here for. And we're unique in that way. We're our own masterpiece. The evidence of that to me is there's 8 billion people on the planet, and not even twins have the same fingerprints. So to me, that's a powerful representation that we don't have to make comparisons. We can take our journey, what we believe is our passion and our fuel and our belief, and really do the work that we feel we can contribute wherever that sits. So for some people, that's entrepreneurship. For some people, it's running a role in an organization that they don't run. There's all kinds of makeup of that, but I think your divine purpose is for you, and to really give yourself time to explore that and live into it. It creates such a different life when you can live into your purpose.
Man, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Everything you just said. I believe that our Creator created us all individually unique and with a unique purpose in life. And it's our duty as spiritual beings living this human experience to go out there and find what that purpose is that your Creator created you to do. And then, once you start going towards that purpose, you're co-creating your life with that Creator, whether you call it God, the universe, infinite intelligence, and being aligned with that source to be able to walk and live in your purpose is so important. And Michelle, when you hear the word reforge, what comes to mind?
Oh, that's a good one. The first thought I have is forging to me is using iron, right? So as a process, like I just immediately got a vision of like some sparks in iron, because when we reforge, we're recreating something or we're redefining it. And I do think, like, I love the scripture, iron sharpens iron, because like when we're here in this conversation and somebody's listening to it, we're having a powerful experience that could, just by listening to this, reshape someone's life and future. In our own lives, that's the same too, like reforging. It's just redirecting, looking at it through a new vision. I think that's what reforge means to me.
Yes. Yeah. Looking at it with a new vision. I love that. And there's someone out there today who's not listening to the episode, not watching it. They might not even know about the podcast. And they're looking to reforge their life. And they don't have the tools. They don't know where to begin. What's one piece of advice you could give someone that's looking to reforge their life today?
The thing I would encourage you to do is get some support in your life. And support can look like a lot of different things. So I'm going to say professional support, and defining it that way. You may want to talk to a coach. You may want to talk to a counselor, depends on what challenges you have going on. But getting outside advocacy for your dreams, or what's on the inside of you, that you're feeling that uncertainty or unsureness that says, I don't know if I should do this, or I've always had this idea, or I don't know how I would start. There's somebody who knows those answers. And if you don't start verbalizing what it is that you want and need, you can't manifest the resources and people that you can't believe who will show up in your world to help unpack your next level. And so I think communicating outward, like letting it go out of the shadows of the fear, right? Internally, to speak it out, to say it out loud, because your words are so powerful. I'm a huge believer in manifestation. And whatever you speak out, I believe there's an echo of all the resources in the world coming back to you to try to conspire to help you get it. So if you're keeping it your deep, dark secret and not telling someone that you could work with, then you're limiting what's possible for you.
Yeah. So I love that. Manifestation is so real. I'm a big believer also. And what's one thing about Michelle Hammonds that the audience does not know that you enjoy doing for?
I really love the work that I do. I feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose. I hold belief for others when they tell me their dreams and their hopes and their aspirations. I believe as much or more as you believe, if that's what your vision is, because I've seen it play out so many times in my life over many, many years and decades, that holding belief for something that feels uncertain to you gives you the advocacy and the fuel to go forward. So I think just really sitting with people and hearing at a human level what they're up to and where they're going. And we all have beautiful dreams and goals and hopes of how we can change our world and make it a more positive place. And we need more people stepping up to that. So I think it's just really being able to have those conversations with people and truly believe, you know, if you and I were talking about your goals, I would believe whatever you believe, I believe at a higher level for you.
Yes. I love that, man. And man, when you love what you do for a living, is such a blessing, man. That's the way you should be living life. Doing something that you enjoy, doing something that you live for, doing something that, and when you wake up in the morning, you don't need the alarm clock. It's just waking you up and saying, it's time to get out of bed to go walk and live in your purpose. Man, that sure is a lot of fun. I love doing what I do also. And I wholeheartedly believe that that's the way to live life. Michelle, thank you so much for coming through. I really appreciate it. I knew that you were going to drop the knowledge, and you even exceeded the expectation, even though I didn't think that was possible. So thank you so much for coming through.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and it's a powerful place to just stop and think about what your purpose is, you know, and just that you brought that topic forward is huge for the people listening or who will continue to listen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It is really important. Purpose is everything. And for all the viewers and listeners out there, thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for checking it out. And don't forget, I'm going to ask what I always ask, LFSS, like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, share, because there's somebody out there today that's not listening to the episode and they don't know how to reforge their life. They don't know where to begin. Maybe it's their business, their finances, their health, their relationships. Something in their life is not aligned right now. And this episode or past episodes could help them reforge their life. So don't forget to share. Stay productive, stay profitable, and stay blessed, y'all.
You've been listening to Reforge Your Life with your host, Joe Rivera. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Joe Rivera and how he can help you or your organization reforge your life and regain your place at the top, head on over to withjoerivera.com and follow Joe on all social platforms. The Reforge Your Life podcast was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.